Hello, welcome to the Offshoot, and I'm the host, Lee Sean Nelson. I have a wonderful friend and guest on today, Bridget Desmukes. Bridget, welcome to the Offshoot.
Thank you for having
It's
me.
so great to have a woman on the program who can talk about issues that are current, who has a perspective that I don't think gets heard very often. So, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
So, I want to talk to you about a number of things, but one thing I want to talk to you about is the fact that you, a mother, you're raising 7 children and you're homeschooling.
All right.
So let's start out by telling us a little bit about yourself and your kids, your husband, and why you all decided to homeschool.
So I am a nurse by profession. Been a nurse for over 20 years and kind of like migrated in different areas of nursing.
Okay.
And then up about maybe 6 years ago, I saw that my children were not happy basically in school, right?
And I'm assuming the public schools in Washington, D.C.
The public school system in Washington, D.C.
And not charter schools.
Not charter schools. This
Okay.
is DC public schools.
Okay.
They were being bullied.
Mm.
And so, with my children having sickle cell, that was the issue because as a mother, I was already battling, keeping their health
Yeah.
in check, right?
And of course, as black children, of course, that's a thing that parents have to be aware of that not other parents have to think about because
Right.
that's pretty prominent in the black community.
Right. And that's also something that, although it's prominent, it's not talked about.
Yes.
It's not brought up. So there's a lack of education as far as what the disease is and how to treat it, right? And so for me, finding out that this is what they had, right? Initially you have that fear, like oh my gosh, what am I going to do? This is something I don't know. How am I going to handle this? But for me, I made it a choice, right? It was my mission because these are children that were given to me by God.
Yeah.
And it was my responsibility, not anybody else's, to be able to take care of them in a way that, fostered a healthy upbringing, right? Fostered their ability to live to the best of their ability with what the resources that they had. And so in my mind, I refuse to allow this sickness to be a crutch. It just
And I'm assuming that in the DC public schools, the teachers, the educational professionals, they didn't recognize the needs of the kids.
Right, because again, this is a disease that, although it's prominent in the black community, is not something that they're well educated about.
Yeah.
And so, telling the teacher, like, okay, you cannot have them out when the temperature drops to 30. Like, not at all on any level. Even at 40, these are some of the guidelines. They have to wear this. They can't be overexerted. They have to have, and being in the school system where, the teacher's handling all these other kids, being able to watch them to say, okay, look, go put your jacket on. If you're tired, sit down. If you need water, let me give it to you. You can go get some water, et cetera, et cetera. That wasn't happening. And so my kids were ending up in the emergency room.
Oh, wow.
On a regular basis.
And that can be pretty traumatic. Well, very traumatic.
Right. And not because of anything that they were doing, but just out of the negligence of the teachers being able to pay attention to their health needs and concerns.
Yeah.
So that was one reason, just that constant fact that they were always in the emergency room. The other thing too is because of the way that we were raising our kids, we were teaching them in a way that it was unorthodox because some of the subjects that we were bringing up, we wanted to stay ahead. And so being a child who knows already some of these things, teachers feel intimidated. Why are you challenging what I'm saying? Well, if what you're saying is not accurate, right? And then you have a child that's just sitting there like, okay, there's nothing you're giving me that's challenging me right now. And then you're going to question whether or not they're doing the work because they're doing it so fast. So that became a problem.
And so with that, then why didn't the schools recognize that your kids were probably a level above the other kids or what have you? They didn't try to put them in a more advanced class? Or
They did not. There was only one teacher that I can identify that saw that, right, and was able to like challenge, and that was my oldest son's teacher. Challenge him, and the teacher was a math teacher, and challenge him beyond where he was already at, because he knew that wasn't doing anything for him. But aside from him, you had a whole school of staff members that just
basically ignored,
right.
And so those are two main reasons why you decided to homeschool your kids.
Right. The bullying, the fact that they were not being challenged, and just they were constantly sick. And so we ended up having, a confrontation where we actually met with the principal and the staff members to say, look, this behavior, had it been done anywhere outside of the school setting, would be considered abuse.
Yes, that's true.
But here I am with my children that I've sent to school so that they can be educated. And you guys, with all the instructions, are not doing your due diligence to keep them safe.
So how long have you been homeschooling now?
So I would say about 5-6 years.
Yeah, and the oldest kid is how old?
The oldest is 16. Right. The oldest homeschooled child is 16. I have one that's already graduated and out of the house.
Okay.
Right. So the oldest homeschooled child is 16.
So how is that? So how did you, because I know your kids, they're wonderful kids. She has beautiful, wonderful, smart kids. But there is an age difference. Right. So how do you manage that?
So, well, our philosophy is that kids learn regardless, right? So whether you're 1, 2, or 17, you still, whatever material is being taught, you're still pulling from that material based on your age level, based on your understanding. So if I'm teaching you about sentence structure, I'm teaching all of you about sentence structure.
Okay.
Right? And so the floor is open for you to ask questions. If you don't have an understanding as far as like what I'm saying and how I'm presenting it, ask, right? Then I also go through and break down like, okay, what is a sentence structure? In a way that it's chewable, like they can digest it. Yeah. Whether you're 1 or you're 17. Yeah. It's digestible.
Okay.
Right. So the material that's being taught, right, is taught so that it's understandable.
So are they still testing higher than the kids who are in public schools?
Yeah, because there's information that they know that is not being taught in school.
So what do people in the public get wrong about homeschooling, and should more Black families look into homeschooling?
I think so. And I think because it fosters a closer connection educationally, right? In a way that you're able to assess really like, okay, so if your child is struggling in a particular area, in homeschooling, you can really, it's a one-on-one thing. So you can assess, okay, this is working, this is not working, right? This is a visual child, this is an auditory child. Like they can learn from, you speaking and hearing things, right?
One's more creative and one's more...
Exactly. And so you can tailor like what they need and how you bring the information to them. And so they absorb it more. Not only that, but the area of the subjects that you teach, they expand. Yeah. You're not limited to, okay, we have to stick with this curriculum this way, in this form, at this time, right? And then you also cut down on the time. Because if you think about, okay, in the morning they're doing breakfast. In the afternoon they're doing lunch. In the public school system. Yeah. Then they have recess. Yeah. Then the time between each class, let's say about 5 times. So when you look at the span of time they're in school,
they're not getting as
how much time are they really learning? Yeah. And then while you're in the class teaching, okay, how many times did you have to stop the teaching to tell this person, right, to stop doing this, don't touch that, listen to that, So all of that takes away from their learning. As opposed to homeschooling where you're right there with the child and you're going through, and you don't need 5-10 hours of education time to really have like a good bulk
for the day
of substance, right? Yeah. So you have like your core material, you can sit there and you can structure it and teach them what they need, and they can ask questions. Yeah. And you have that dialogue that you have that feedback to know, okay, this area is an area where they really didn't get it. So let me try to restructure how I brought it to them. so that they can really absorb it and regurgitate it back to me. And that's the biggest thing.
Okay.
If they can't regurgitate it back to me, then I know you didn't get it.
Yeah. So is that one of the things, like some of the things that people get wrong about homeschooling, is that it is manageable and there isn't like one set formula for it?
Right. I think for most people, homeschooling it's overwhelming to think that, okay, here I am, an average person, and now I'm going to teach.
Yeah.
We're teaching every day.
Yes, we are.
We teach in our behavior. We teach in our speech.
Yeah.
We're teaching every day. So my message to any person, whether male or female, who wants to homeschool their child, the biggest thing is your commitment.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, you and your husband are very, very committed, and it's still, to me, it still seems like a lot to manage. And you talk about we're always teaching, and so I'm assuming that means that in your everyday life, even when you're done with school for the day, ensuring that you're speaking proper English with the kids for the day, and reading with them, or them seeing what book you're reading or what newspaper you're reading.
Right,
and,
because we're walking lessons ourselves.
Yeah.
Even at the grocery store, you know, when you look at, if you want to teach them about, like, for example, like their dad teaches them about commerce and business and, you know, things. So when you're at the store, what better way to show, you know, a child who's the consumer and who's the producer by actually the hands-on, like, who makes this?
Yeah.
So if you're the one that makes this, are you the consumer or the producer, right? Or, you know, you want this pair of shoes. Okay, now you're spending money that you work hard for to get. Are you the consumer or the producer?
Yeah.
Now, what is the benefit? Which would you prefer, to be the consumer or right? And what does that look like?
Yeah, but you're teaching them how to manage or understand capitalism as it is.
Right.
Okay. But I know that you guys also want your kids to kind of do their own thing in some ways, correct?
Right.
Okay. And so you're setting them up to be successful no matter what.
Exactly.
So to me, I kind of look at that as an advantage of homeschooling, because your kids are not being, and I'm going to say this, they're not being brainwashed to buy into the quote American dream, end quote.
Right.
So they can sort of think for themselves. So are you kind of teaching them critical thinking without them knowing they've been taught critical thinking?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And how to really look at the decisions you make, look at society for what it is, and not what you're trained to believe that it is, you know, to ask questions.
Yeah.
You know, if someone says the sky is green, why?
Yeah. But you as the mother, as a black woman, a lot of pressure oftentimes falls on the woman. And I've never seen you under pressure. You know, you've always been very calm and collected and cool. And so, but people are people.
Right.
Okay. And we have all kinds of moves, et cetera, and so forth. And so what would you tell women in general, specifically in black women, women of color, who are thinking about this, and that stereotype that you have to be this strong figure for the household?
Nobody's perfect.
That's true. Nobody is perfect.
Nobody's perfect. Even me sitting here right now, nobody is perfect. I have my days, you know, ups and downs, but that's based on my character. The things that I've said to myself that I'm going to be exhibit. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
So my advice would be just be yourself.
Yeah.
Right? You know your weaknesses, you know your strengths. So those things that are your strengths, hammer them down.
Yeah.
Your weaknesses, work on them. We all have them. But being able to identify, look, this is an area that I'm strong, this is an area that I'm weak, that's half the battle.
Yeah.
But I think for us as women, we have this persona that, okay, I'm going to be strong 24/7.
Yeah. And that's, you don't have to be.
It's not realistic.
Yeah.
It's just not realistic, because no human being can be strong 24/7.
Well, and you have daughters. Is that something you're teaching your daughters?
Yeah,
because I know that you want to. I know that one of the things you also work on is educating young women on how to be themselves. So, so how are you teaching your young women, your young daughters, to be individuals in that way?
Accept who you are, flaws and all.
Yeah.
You know, everything about you is perfect. Whether you think it is or you don't, it's perfect, right? Those things that you feel like are such an issue for you that you just can't accept, work on changing it if you can't. If you can't, those are the things that you have to now start addressing and dealing with. You know, why is this an issue? Is this something that was brought on to me by someone else's perception or ideology, or is this something that I have adopted for myself? Right? And so being able to look at that constructively and understanding like all the things that we grow up with are indoctrinated in us by someone.
Yes.
And so being able to remove those layers to find out, okay,
that's
what is actually right? It is.
You have to dig deep to kind of remove those layers and figure out who you really are to find your true, authentic self.
And it means being honest.
Yeah.
It means being honest.
Which is hard. Not all folks want to be honest with themselves. It's very, very difficult. You know?
It is, because who wants to see themselves as less than?
Yeah, exactly. Right? I mean, I can attest to an individual who was educated to believe in the American dream and go to school, go to college, and build that house, that that picket fence and all that and so forth. But I learned early in my late 20s, early 30s that was all false. But when I realized that, I had to kind of unpack a lot of stuff that I learned from undergrad and from high school and junior high school and elementary school. Those things, yes, they benefit me in a lot of ways, but looking at where we are today, a lot was missing. And I do feel like, man, had I had someone in my life who could have given me an education that paralleled what I was already getting, things may have been a little bit differently. But with homeschooling, you're ensuring that your kids are getting it because they're getting something that they couldn't get in public schools in terms of history, in terms of culture, in terms of business and commerce and religion, character,
right, being able to assess your intelligence, and proper knowledge.
And what about competition between the children? Do you see any of that, even though the age range is vast?
No, not necessarily. I think for them, when they see that one of them is doing something good, they're more prone to want to adapt that, as opposed to feeling like I have to be better than. They want to be as good as, right? And then they work together to be good together, right? And I think that's a big thing that we're lacking as far as like how our children interact with each other. Because then you see the things that are happening in society. Like, you have something, now I want it. So because I can't have it, I'm going to take it.
Yeah, because one of the things that people get wrong or people assume about children who are homeschooled is that when they leave the home and go into the real world, they won't be able to interact with people who went to public schools yet. And I can't say that I've seen that with your case because one or two of them have come over. I've been over there and they've always been very engaging with me. And so is that a stereotype or perception people get wrong about kids?
It is. That they're not socialized. That they're sheltered and they won't know how to interact with people. That occurs if, as a homeschool parent, you shelter you. But most homeschool parents have the ideology that the more exposure that my children have, the more well-rounded they are. So you have them in homeschool organizations. There are homeschool groups online that they interact with. One year they had pen pals that they were writing to in different areas of the world. So they're exposed more to people than you would the average child in a public school, because that circle is your circle. That's it. Outside of that, if you're not exposed to anything else, that's what you're limited to.
That is true. Because in public schools, like in my case, growing up down in the South, you're exposed to this. If you're in that lane, or if you're in this lane, it might be football in that lane, etc., and so forth. If you're in music, it's this lane. Those cliques. Those cliques. Those groups.
And as you get older, mentally, you're programmed to fit in that clique. Whatever that may be as an adult.
But with homeschooling, there are no cliques, is what you're saying, right?
Right.
Okay, and so your kids can find their own way.
And you're more open-minded. You interact with people different. You're more accepting of other people, you know. And so when you start seeing prejudice and judgment as far as like who people are, their character and stuff like that, you don't have as much of that because homeschool kids are socialized to see other people and, you know, see other situations in whole as a totality. You know, they're not limited to just that small aspect of who a person is.
Yeah, and so you're going to continue to homeschool all of them through
all the way through high school.
So you have a lot of years left.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah,
I do. But it's fun.
Yeah,
it's fun.
Yeah. So what is fun about it? You know what I mean, give me some examples of what makes it fun for you and for your husband and for the kids.
Just being able to see how they absorb what they're being taught. You know, there's a light that clicks, that goes on when a child really grasps a subject, and then they can apply it and then regurgitate it back to you, whether through vocally, you know, or just through examples in life.
Yeah.
Having a conversation with my 16-year-old, you know, I was blown away because I was able, you know, most parents worry about, okay, if my child goes out here, do they know right from wrong?
Yeah.
Do they have the right structures to be able to make right decisions and everything? And just in the 30 minutes conversation that I had with him, just picking his brain.
Yeah.
Nothing serious. You know, we're at the laundromat, we're just talking. And that's one of the things that we do on a regular basis, just have conversation.
Yeah. And some of your kids, they know ASL, American Sign Language.
Right.
And doesn't one know Spanish, or is it is learning Spanish?
So all of them are learning a different language. So one of the things that their dad did was he picked a certain language for each one of them to learn, right? And not just them. As parents too, we have to be the walking example, right?
Yeah.
So we also have our languages that we're trying to learn how to speak.
I hope it's not 7 different. That's a lot of.
It is. And so we all go through, and so their assignment is to be able to pick 5 words and use those 5 words in conversation throughout the day. And so not only the 5 words, but their culture, the foods they eat, some of the things that are going on in the government as far as that's concerned.
Okay.
You know, just learning all about that culture.
So what languages are they learning?
So French, Spanish, Standard Arabic, Portuguese, Bengali. I think the baby's doing Bengali.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we have quite a few.
That's very, very interesting, but it's also pretty vast because, you know, Arabic, you know, that language, of course, it doesn't use the numbers are, of course, Arabic numeric numbers. We all live with the math. But, you know, but Spanish is a Romance language, okay, which in Arabic it's not.
Right.
Okay. And you're not phonetically, you know, the writing is all different.
It's different.
So how do you manage all of that? You know, there's one case like, you know, I want to learn Arabic. You know, I don't want to learn Spanish. Do you change it up or?
So if you want to learn Arabic, your assignment is already Spanish. So now you have to do both. You know.
Okay.
So learn your Spanish, but you know you're gonna work with your sibling, whoever has Arabic, and you guys, you know, work together. Whatever they're learning, hop in.
That's pretty impressive. That's pretty amazing. You know, because as you know, most American kids are not bilingual.
Right.
Okay.
Right, and that's one of the reasons why, you know, we decided that's something that is important. Yeah. Right, and even as far as like, their father was teaching them the importance of Latin in language. Yeah. Right, and how the root words in Latin basically are in everything in the English and also in law. You know, and so having them to understand how important it is to know those root words, especially when you're dealing with, you know, society, right? You're dealing with laws, you're dealing with rules and regulations and everything else, and what that means. Like, it just opened up their minds like, wow. Yes. You know?
Well, from my interaction with them, I can tell that they are very, very bright kids. And it's kids like that give me hope regarding the future, you know. And I see the same thing for my nieces and nephews. They're very smart as well, but they're in a public school in rural South Carolina. But we hear so much about young people today, especially teenagers and crime and what have you and so forth. But your kids are doing quite well. I mean, I would say that they're doing better than the average kid here in this city.
They're doing good. they're doing good. You know, they're kids like any other kid.
Yeah.
Right. But they have a desire and a hunger to learn. You know, which is very important. And you know, we try to keep it interesting.
Yeah.
We try to keep it engaging, just so because their minds work so fast.
Yeah.
You know, so that they're absorbing and soaking in, you know, stuff all the time. Because if you don't, then society will.
So, what has been the biggest challenge for you, homeschooling your kids?
I would say sticking to a schedule that sticks, right? Because we're always doing so many different things.
Okay.
Like we don't really have like a boxed schedule. Not that I think we would want.
You mean
that.
like 8 to 3 or something like
right,
that?
Right. Initially, that was a challenge. Trying to get them acclimated to just, you know, this is the time that we're structured to do. But then realizing that, okay, that's the mindset that you have when you're going to.
Yeah. Right.
So coming out of that was a big challenge because they started off in public school.
Yeah, I was going to ask, you know, have any of them ever said, Mom, I want to go back to public school? Has
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Absolutely, because they were used to the friends, they were used to the interactions. Although they were going through the things they were going through and being bullied and everything like that, you know, that was a huge change. You know, it's like taking somebody from hot weather and just dipping them in the cold. Yeah. It's like that shock, like, okay, I have to get, what is this?
Yeah.
Right? But in having a conversation with them, like, they wouldn't change it for anything.
Yeah.
Because they themselves are seeing how important it is being homeschooled.
Yeah.
You know, has made not only the way they think, but just the way they've grown, the freedom that they have, you know, their ability to just be themselves, right? To explore like the things that they like and just different things, you know.
Yeah, and public schools here in DC has always been a big issue, and the school system in the city has changed a great deal over the years, especially as the city has become more diverse. And of course, as you know, it's not chocolate city any longer.
Right.
And with the growth of the city, we've seen public schools get better in certain neighborhoods like Capitol Hill, which has lost a huge Black population. So the schools, I think preschool, I think up to like third grade, they're not pretty competitive. Okay, but there's still, I think, if I'm correct from wrong, there's still a gap when it comes to the public schools with junior high school and high school in the city, right?
Right.
So even though we have really good schools for young kids,
to start,
there's something missing when it comes to junior high school and high school in the city.
Right.
Okay. Now you have a 16-year-old who would typically be in high school at this point. What are they saying about homeschooling?
He actually likes it. You know, like I said, initially when we started, it was, I want to go back to school.
Yeah.
But now, you know, looking at it, he likes it.
Yeah.
He likes it. With some of the things that, you know, most kids would think about, like homecoming, prom, stuff like that. You know, again, those are societal things that have been indoctrinated in our minds as far as like what the norm is.
Like you have to have those things. You really don't need those things to have a active teenage life.
Right. Right, and that's some of the areas that I think we've been working with him as far as like having that conversation. Like, okay, what does that look like, and why is that important?
Yeah.
What does that really mean?
Yeah. Why is it important? You know, why do we have homecoming?
Right. Like, what is that? What does it really mean? You know, and teaching him like, just because you have certain organizations, you know, certain groups, certain occasions, certain structured things that you do in school, like. What is it like? What are they indoctrinating you to believe? Yeah,
because it does leave a lot of kids out.
Yeah.
You know, when we have these programs in school, like homecoming king and queen, and even with certain sports, etc. You know, some kids are left out, and so if we want a society that's supposed to be all inclusive, how are we going to have a society that's all inclusive when we teach them, at an early age to segregate? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Right. And you know, you're not really in a position where you're accepting people for who they are.
Yeah.
and then you become adults and you're still trying to live, whether it's that football mentality where you have that clique that you fit right in, and you know that's not where you fit, right? And then you're succumbing to, okay, these are the lifestyles and standards that have been indoctrinated, so I have to keep up with it.
And I go back to what I was saying earlier about your kids learning critical thinking at an early age,
right?
Thinking for themselves and knowing that, okay, I don't have to put myself in a situation. I don't have to be part of that organization. I can still be me,
right,
and have a great life. I don't have to do this or do that.
Because why be in a box that somebody made for you?
Yeah.
Create your own box.
Yeah, because it's pressure. I mean, myself in high school and in undergrad, should I join this organization or be a part of that? And I want to be included in this, and then I got to make friends with this person in order to get into that organization.
Right.
So it's that setup. I'm not knocking it for anyone who is okay with that, but that setup isn't for everyone.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And I do believe it's not the thing for the vast majority of people.
Right. And again, like I said, being honest with yourself. Right.
Yeah.
What works for you is going to work for you regardless.
Yeah.
Right. Whether you're in a school setting or in a homeschool setting.
Yeah.
Whether you like you were saying, like the message to young Black women.
Yeah.
What's going to work for you is going to work for you.
Yeah. And speaking of that, sorry to interrupt. There's for years there have been reports that young girls start out doing very well, equal to their male counterparts, and then at some point, sometimes the young girls kind of fall behind, especially when it comes to STEM subjects like math and science. Okay, are you finding that your girls are holding their own when it comes to the STEM subjects being taught at home?
That's one of the things that we stress. They're all currently in a program with Amazon. And one of the things that she's right there with them, creating, working with the computers, creating designs, they're always, we try to expose them to as much as possible. And then not only that, but knowing that they're homeschooled, when we talk about them and their homeschooling, people reach out. Yeah. And that's the other thing about homeschooling. You have people that have resources, that have opportunities, that they when they see that your children are really eager, and you're eager for them to learn, there's so many resources that people provide, programs that you would normally not even hear about in the public school system.
So will you say that's an advantage? Well, I shouldn't say advantage, but will you say that that's something that parents who are thinking about homeschooling their kids, if they have young women, if they have girls, that they should consider that for young girls that homeschooling might be better than going to public school?
And then you have to assess who your child is, right? Assess who your child is. And if you know that your child is someone who does better when they are taught one-on-one, then homeschooling will be it. If you know that structurally you want your child to learn X, Y, and Z and it's not being provided, then homeschooling is it. Because you get to teach them what it is you want them to learn, what foundation you want to lay for them, right? And so being in the school system, just know that although it's not bad, that's something that we've done for years, right?
Correct, yeah. And I do feel like I got a decent education in high school. I got a better education, of course, in undergrad and graduate school, but I do feel like when I left high school to go to college, that I wasn't 100% prepared.
Right. Right. And that's something that they don't teach you. What does that look like? How do you fill out financial aid forms? What is financial aid?
Exactly.
Your first semester, what classes are you supposed to really be taking so that you're ahead? Like these are little things that, we don't think about. Right, but we throw our kids in there and it's like, okay, this is what you're supposed to be doing. Have at it.
But one thing I want to ask you about before we come to an end is books and reading. So when I was in high school, of course, we had to read the traditional stuff, The Great Gatsby, Beowulf, and those books really did not interest me at all. Right. It wasn't until I got to college at the University of South Carolina in an English class, and we had to read a plethora of books, and it was H.G. Wells' Time Machine. That was the book that just like something
opened
just,
your eyes.
yeah, something just clicked. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have loved reading ever since then. And of course, right now in the U.S., there are a lot of, but there's some parents who are trying to take books out of schools and out of public libraries. So when it comes to books that are, I guess, the traditional books taught in school, are you teaching your kids those books, or are you telling them to read W.E.B. Du Bois, or are you telling them to read Maya Angelou, or are you telling them to read William Faulkner, or?
So let me tell you about books.
Okay.
So initially, my kids had they just reading was like, I'm not interested, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my question to, what do you want to read? Like, what interests you?
Okay.
Right? That's where you start. Because there's no point in me handing you a book and you have no interest. And I've done that.
Yeah, there's no point in giving them James Joyce. Right. And they don't,
and
they
then
don't have
the
any
book
interest
is sitting
in it.
on the counter like, I'm not. So what are you interested in? Comics. Most kids will tell you.
Yes. That was me.
So here's a comic book.
Yeah.
I will get I did it. Would sign out all of it out of the library.
And people get wrong that comic books or graphic novels, there's some really good stories and good writing in those books.
Yeah, and for me, because I really try to guide the way, what they read, because some of these things that you read are not really, they don't edify you, they don't build you up, and that's where my focus is. It has to build you up. It has to teach you some kind of lesson. Okay. Right? You're not just going to read anything just to be reading. Okay. So I would look for comic books that told a story that had a moral to it. Like you had to learn something out of it. And then you have to tell me that. And I like book reports. So though you're reading a comic book, you need to write me
a report on what you read.
That's right. What did you learn? What did you get out of it? Tell me the characters. Like I would have a list of questions. Like write it, because it killed two birds, with one stone. Yeah. You're doing your handwriting practice. Your vocabulary, because whatever word in there that you didn't know,
you're going to look it up.
Write it down. Look it up. I want you to know what that means. You know what I mean? You're not just reading just to be reading. Like this is all, and this is what I'm saying as far as like making it practical. We learn every day. Yeah. But why not make it fun? I'm not going to force you to read something that you're not interested in, because then the learning process stops right there.
Yes, because Lord knows I was not interested in Beowulf at all. And in undergrad, I really struggled getting through James Joyce. I didn't care for it at all. But there are other things that I really did enjoy. So yeah, I do believe that the right book for a kid can really just change things.
Absolutely. Like my daughter, she struggled with like reading because she just didn't like. She wasn't interested until I finally found a series for her, and it just, like you said, it clicked. She read 13 books in the span of 3 weeks. Wow. I mean, was like digesting the whole thing.
Well, what was the book?
It was Maya.
Maya, I'm not familiar.
Yeah, it's a series that. Okay. Yeah, and I went to the library and I got the whole series, and they had to send me back a couple of times because they didn't have it. I was like, nope, when it comes in, send it to me. And I would go pick it up. Wow. She read the whole thing. And now, and like you said, it sparked something in her. Now she's ready to graduate from reading those to
something more mature or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Right. I have my 7-year-old, same thing. I got her the series. Now she'll pick up my books. Because I have counseling books, I have books. For me, the books that interest me are like anything that, on the mind, anything that builds you up, anything that talks about behavior. Because that's currently what I'm studying. She'll pick my books up. Mommy, can I read this? Yeah. That's 7.
That's pretty profound.
And can sit there and really have conversation with me about...
And comprehend.
Yes, and comprehend. And what she doesn't understand, she'll ask me, well, what does this word mean? And then I'll break it down to her. But you're never too young. Yeah. Just like you're never too old.
Yeah, I agree. I think I was one of those kids who wanted something more at a younger age, but that's in the past, and I'm grateful to be where I am today. And I do believe that strongly reading is fundamental.
Oh, they hate when I say that.
Oh, really?
I say it all day. Like when, for example, like It's always a fun thing for us. So if they have to do something, right, and they don't read the instructions, let's say, for example, baking a cake, and you don't read the instructions, and then you miss an ingredient.
Yeah.
You know, my saying is reading is fundamental, and they're just looking at me like, so now they're getting into the habit of, okay, if I have to do something, I have to read it, or they'll, whatever it is, whatever they're doing, they make it their, business to try to read, for understanding, basically.
I think that is such a great thing because it does apply to the real world. It does apply to the business world where I am with my career, where I work I work in the government, so I won't tell you where. But needless to say, there's a big issue within my agency with people not reading emails.
Yes.
They don't read it all the way through.
Right.
And then things come up and then people get frustrated. Right. And so I'm like, read the email. And so
in totality, not just the first part.
Yeah, read the whole thing. Right. Because that way you won't miss the ingredient that goes into that cake.
Right. But not only that, but it also has to do with your understanding and interpretation. Mm-hmm. Because you can read something someone sent you and interpret it differently. Yes. Based on your understanding.
That is true.
So if your mind is not being fed in a way where it's open and expanded, your interpretation of something that I might send you in document, right? Just like you see, one of the things we teach them all the time, like all these apps that you want to download. Yeah. You signing your soul away. Like, read the fine print. Read the fine print. What does it say?
I hear you on that one, but I can tell you that I never read those terms and agreements. So, I don't think anyone does, but I want to, but they're just so long.
But they do. It's by design.
It is by design.
It is by design.
Yeah. So if anyone out there reads the terms and agreements for anything that they sign up for, and just like downloading the app, let me know what was the experience like, because I just cannot read those terms and agreements.
It's by design, and now they have it so that when you read it, you have no choice but to click the agree button. Yeah. Because now they're hip to the fact that there are a few that actually read and can choose not to accept. So then the decision becomes: do I really want this app, or do I want to commit to allow my information to go out there and use any kind of way? So,
and that's the kind of critical thinking that I love that the kids are getting. That's the kind of critical thinking that I think that all of us should have, even as adults. We don't think about, okay, do I really want this out that bad?
Right, the long term.
Do I really want this credit card that bad?
Right,
yeah.
Right.
Because there are consequences.
Yeah, and that's what I tell them all the time. You're not thinking about today. Yeah. Long term. Mm-hmm. If you commit to doing X, Y, and Z, whatever it is, what is going to be the outcome to that? Yeah. And are you willing to accept that outcome in 5 years, in 10 years, in 1 year, in 30 days, right? Mm-hmm. Just off of this one decision right here. Because good or bad, you have to face that consequence. Yeah. You do. I don't.
Very true.
That's your decision, and this is the consequences. You have to live with that.
Yeah. Well, is there anything you want to add as we conclude regarding homeschooling or inspiring young girls or even young men?
I would say whatever it is that you aspire to do it. Mm-hmm. Do it. We oftentimes box ourselves to believing that we cannot, not because we're not able to, but because society has dictated that we cannot. Yeah. And once you get to a place where you accept and understand that you have the power and autonomy to do anything.
Literally.
And to change your mind, because we're always pivoting in life, right? Yeah. Nothing is set in stone. But if you don't step out there and try it, you're always going to be in regret, always wondering.
That is true. And you can't live in the past. So don't live in the past. Live your life without trying to have any regrets. I've learned that lesson, and I'm still learning that lesson. So, Bridget Desmukes, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed this.
It was great. I know there's more we can talk about, and we do have to have this talk again. Okay. For those, please subscribe to this channel on YouTube. But you can also find me, the Offshoot Podcast, on Amazon Podcast. You can find me on Spotify, Apple iTunes, and Alexa. So please check us out, follow us, and we look forward to seeing you again, subscribing to this program. Okay, that's the offshoot.org or the Offshoot Podcast on any kind of streaming service for podcasts. Thank you.